Hi there, good evening. It's really great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us at Freelance Futures. My name's Richard Watts, and I'm a 53-year-old white man with clear glasses and short hair. And I'm joining you today from our office in central London. And I'm a director of People Make It Work, and one of the partners who've been creating Freelance Futures over the last few months. So welcome to More Manifestation, Less Manifesto. This event's part of Freelance Futures, and that's a summer programme of learning and action for equitable conditions in culture. And this event's being recorded for future access and will be available in the next couple of days on our website for you to view, share and promote. As long as we do a good job. So before we start, we need to outline some access and other important information. So we have captioning by My Clear Text, and Renee is providing that. If you need to access or would like to access captioning, please click the closed caption button. There's also a link which means that you can have it in another browser. And we'll be putting that in the chat now. We also have BSL interpretation. Interpreters of Colour Network are providing our BSL interpretation today, and Abby is with us. We'll ensure that Abby's image is pinned so that she's viewable at all times. We've got a very light code of conduct. Freelance Futures is a call for collective learning and action to build equitable conditions for freelancers working in culture. And it will take all of our efforts to affect real change. So we welcome all your insights and experiences as independent practitioners working within cultural organisations, unions, funding bodies and policy making. And given that we need all of us, this is our basic code of conduct for today. Please respect and value your collaborators in this room. Be aware of your privilege, know when to make space, when to take space, avoid overcomplicated language and explain technical terms. And we're all at different stages of our learning. So let's respect the person and challenge the idea. In terms of video, this is a relaxed environment. Feel free to access this event in any way that makes work for you. If possible, please start with your video option switched on, just so that we can welcome our speakers and contributors. And if you can make sure that you're muted, that would be great. We are hoping to have some open discussion amongst the group today. And when we get to that stage, I'll invite you to pop your hand up to let me know that you have a view that you'd like to share. So we're thinking today about this idea of manifestation and manifesto. And I guess we're recognizing that lots of organizations and individuals, to be fair, might articulate our intentions. And that's only part of the challenge. Some of the changes that we want to see aren't down to ideas, but they're down to implementation. And probably too many of us pause after sharing our intentions rather than manifesting them. We wrote about this recently in Arts Professional, and there's a link that I think Nyahue, our producer, is going to pop in the chat. Thank you, Nyahue. So this programme would be a disappointment if it just creates more lists of things we want to do. Those committed to access, inclusion and diversity, amongst other things, have already evolved powerful strategies for creating concrete shifts in culture and practice. And many artists also create conditions for change in their work. So today we've invited some of those, some artists and cultural sector practitioners who've been thinking about inclusion, diversity, and manifesting positive intentions into concrete change at the level of culture and practice. And we're going to hear from a range of people who've invested energy and insight into this kind of work. And I'm hoping we'll be inspired and fueled by their presence, their examples, and their practice. And also, hopefully we'll glimpse and adopt strategies that we might use or request to be adopted to create better conditions for freelance work. So I'm going to start today by inviting Teresa to share her perspectives around positive strategies that she uses or has witnessed for ensuring that intentions translate into shifts in conditions that have momentum and endurance, authenticity and depth. I'm going to hand over to Teresa now. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am a nervous presenter, so I'll be reading to you. I don't have visuals, nor will I make jokes. I want to thank Richard, the panelist, and you all for sharing the space with me. Over the next few minutes, I will tell you about my practice, the importance of being together, working together, and having conversations along the way. This versus doing it after the fact, and how responsibility for and to one another is central to working collectively to create spaces of mutual care and action. I am Teresa Cisneros, a Chicana Mexican-American, the daughter of Vicente Cisneros and Lucrecia Puente, both of Mexican lineage. I am from La Frontera, the Mexico-Texas border. I open with this detail so you don't have to wonder where I am from or what I am. And because I practice from where I am from, not where I am at. I am not of this place being London, being England, being the UK. Where I come from, we practice a philosophical way of being, which is, if you're okay, then I am okay. We are taught from an early age that each decision we make affects someone outside ourselves. We have to think through collective beingness and act through it. A friend recently said to me, you are like that because you are a desert person. And desert people know they can never act alone because to survive, you depend on one another. Well, northern Mexico-Texas border is very much a desert. I have desert and border ways of thinking about the world and the systems I navigate, which center collectivity and collaboration. I am Senior Culture, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Practice Manager at the Wellcome Trust. Yes, a mouthful. Last year, I was Inclusive Practice Lead at Wellcome Collection. I was in Art and Science, Health, and now I'm in Biomedical Research Funding. I continue to work as a mentor to institutions and cultural workers today. I have been a manager, an educator, an artist, a curator, and proud arts administrator. My preferred title is Curator of People, because it encapsulates my practice, the practice of how I work in institutions, how I come to care for the institution and those that work on behalf of the institution. It's how I support the institution to actually practice what it intends to do or desires to do. It's a shift from creating strategy to enacting strategy through a deep sense of care for those I work with and how I work with them and how they work with collaborators. I think this is through policies, which I see as forms of laws that need to be functional and applicable to how people behave when they work for or within an institution. I extend this to how people embody the policies they agree to work under. I am committed to policies that ensure people are treated equitably, included, and considered. I used to work with the politic of thinking and curating contemporary art, ensuring that art and artists I worked with engaged with forms of politics and justice. A time came when I felt curating objects or artists wasn't good enough, as it did not have the effect I desired. I was frustrated with that the art object did not change policy, create the change I desired, uphold accountability, or cared for people. I center collaborating with people to design how people work in institutions to how people will learn to think differently. It's a shift from caring for the object to caring for people. Curator of people because I have to think carefully and act with care for and on behalf of the institution and people. At the core is how my practice works to shift how the institution functions and for whom. It is what you call behavioral change. My approach is to listen first, collaborate in relation to the change at hand, then co-create the conditions for people to change, perhaps changing how they practice, which impacts the culture of an organization, potentially changing the system of that organization.
Hey,
I want to ensure, sorry?
Sorry to just jump in. Just wondered if you would mind slowing down just a little.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much. That'd be beautiful.
Sorry about that. I want to ensure policies are embedded and that institutions' intentions can be lived by teaching people how to embody them. I focus on policy to address bad behaviors like racism, ableism, etc. I think about this because these institutions were not designed for me. They were designed for white, heterosexual, non-disabled men. I start with the premise that I am complicit in systemic oppression and ask myself, what will I do whilst I am inside? My work centers accountability and mutual responsibility by asking what are the conditions we can co-create to ensure we can learn, collaborate, and do the work we say we will do in an ethical, equitable, inclusive way. I work in the belly of the beast, a contemporary colonial monster with a gaping colonial wound. I work to heal this colonial wound, a one that refuses to heal. I use the title curator of people because to try to understand how to care and I put myself on the line. I am always already ready to be fired to ensure institutions behave justly. What I mean, the people who staff them, because institutions are people like you and me. I do this via policy changes, learning development programs, and programming. I understand care practices because I studied ethics and later did an MA in arts administration. As well, for my upbringing, I have mastered colonial administration. I am a colonial administrator, but one that uses the logic of colonial administration against itself. I have a desire to destroy institutions, to reconstruct them from a just vantage point. Don't get me wrong, I love institutions, their policies and administrating them. They provide spaces to be responsible for one another and to create inroads in systemic change to challenge oppression. As a colonial administrator, I have the tools and see myself both in and out of the system. I understand my complicity in upholding an oppressive system, but reflect on what will I do about it in my work. I was awarded a Changemakers grant from the Arts Council of England as part of the Creative Case for Diversity in 2016. I collaborated with the Showroom Gallery to curate object positions. I designed a program to explore decolonial processes, cultural equity, and colonial administration. By creating a mentoring scheme called Holding Space for Artists, I curated a public lecture series, held space for the gathering of Black POC women in the arts, an exhibition, and wrote Document Zero, a publication exploring our inability to diversify the arts. Essential in the grant was to repurpose the funding to platform others and challenge institutional behavior by enacting deep care and collectivity, by asking artists what they needed on their terms. I was supposed to have senior level power in the showroom, but I didn't. My intention had been to share with gallery staff other ways of working that embedded collectivity, care, and equity. For instance, in Holding Space, the intention was to provide artists equitable access to the visual arts, from funding to an exhibition. This happened, but it was marred with difficulties because the gallery did not have systems in place to support challenging situations and did not have the knowledge to understand how to care for bodies that have been excluded from the arts. For clarification, I mean white staff and brown, Black, queer, disabled bodies. I learned the difference of trying to do the work on my terms versus what the management thought I should do. It laid the groundwork for me to ask, what are the conditions needed for us to be responsible for one another in order to actively co-design change work? I also collaborated with 6 arts organizations around this time. I was engaged by 5 galleries who wanted diverse audiences. I rejected this by saying, I did not do diversity work and informed them that the audiences were not the issue, it was the staff, hence having to work with staff. The process addressed their lack of diversity in thought and behavior, what the issues might be and what might be needed. We held space to have honest, uncomfortable conversations about policies, the terms and conditions at hand. We supported people to think differently, be more equitable, considerate and responsible for one another by the terms they set out in how and why they practiced. Some change occurred in hiring practices, language use and policies, and creating space for equitable conversations. At this time, I contributed to a show called The Policy Show, a project exploring policies at a time I started to think about policies of care. I was interested in informal policies of care. I wanted to know how we could take care of one another and the actions we did to indicate this without formal agreements. Things like who empties out the dishwasher, who's going to offer to make tea, who's going to turn off the lights at the end of the night, remembering people's birthdays, etc. Those policies of care we do not see or do not name, but yet are there. Following this, I was invited to work with the staff to address power dynamics, policy development, and communication within the organization. I designed a 2-day retreat in collaboration with an artist as a result of asking staff what they needed first. They listened to one another and co-designed intentions of how staff would enact care and co-deliver their work. I could not hold them accountable for this, sadly, as I was a freelancer. However, I later learned some change did happen, but it was inconsistent. It was very evident at this point that the administration of people and the conditions we create for people to work in and how the institution enacts their mission or intention had become my work. I wrote document 0 as a result because I needed space to talk about what I was seeing, but also my own complicity in upholding systems that exclude. I had to be with myself and be self-critical in order to illustrate how we all have failed to diversify the arts. It is written script format of meetings that take place in arts organizations. Document 0 still rings true today. In 2018, I reluctantly applied to work at Wellcome Collection as inclusive practice lead. What convinced me was reading a radically honest diversity strategy. I say reluctant because of it being the belly of the beast and how a brown-othered body like mine could function in it. I arrived with the mandate to ensure we diversified audiences and partnerships by working, engaging, and platforming with deaf, disabled, neurodivergent, and racially minoritized people. I thought again, the issue are not the audiences, the issue are staff that do not know how to think beyond their mostly white, non-disabled bodies. Why would they think differently if they have never had to, but more importantly, have never been taught to? I do not shame or guilt people. I approach them from a compassionate approach. I do not assume anyone should know. I rather ask what they do not know, what they might need to create a way for everyone to learn in order to create real change. If an institution has embedded values, which usually inform the mission, and they have principles which are, again, ways of agreeing how to be together, then it's the administrators of the institutions to ensure that those they hire know how to embody the values of the institution and how to work with external people. I refer to those who work on behalf of the cultural institution, full-time, part-time, contracted staff, etc., those making decisions on behalf of the institution. The desire was to ensure certain groups are included. My logic was, if we want to include, how can we ensure our staff understand how to include those who have been excluded? I went from creating objects to curating people. When I arrived at the Wellcome, I was asked what my strategy was. I said, if I have one, fire me, as I don't know you. So I went on a listening, talking tour to get to know colleagues, what they feared, what they did not know. This led to laying the foundations on how to think with others through a process of research called Person-Centered Design for Inclusive Practices, which 10% of our staff went on over 4 months. The key question of the research was, why are we are well-intentioned, well-meaning, mostly university educated people, we are still so exclusively white and non-disabled? People shared their needs and barriers they faced in how to be inclusive, their expectations of leadership, what they thought they needed to learn and how to learn. My logic is, I can't tell you what you need and how you need to learn. I need to ask you questions in order for me to collaborate in your learning. I recall going from team to team to tell them what we would be doing. I was sincere, caring, but also always made time to listen and support others in their collective learning journey. I was setting up the terms and conditions by which I would work with people and the institution. This led to my designing a framework for an anti-racism curriculum because staff were uncomfortable talking about race, but were more comfortable talking about disability and access. I would state in meetings that I did not understand what the problem was instead of calling them out or having them go on a half-day workshop. I felt they needed to do some deep collective learning, to witness each other and hold each other accountable. But I think it is unethical. Sorry, there's a large bumblebee around me. But I think it is unethical to hold someone accountable for something they do not know how to do. It's like asking a friend to do my plumbing, then getting upset with her when it does not work. The framework is a building blocks of knowledge in 5 phases. You start with talking about race, then learn about the foundations of race making and how it manifests today, to learning bad behaviors and learning new skills, to embedding a practice to embody the practice. This was done in early 2020, before the murder of George Floyd and the very public outcry by many institutions. I state this because many organizations made statements about what actions they were going to make, which I found was empty rhetoric. I lobbied for the collection to not make promises of action, but to instead acknowledge our failures, the reckoning we needed to do, and where we were at. And I'm going to stop there. I had more, but I think it's important that others also have time to talk. So, and I also have a large bee roaming around me. So I'm going to stop there. And there's more things I want to share in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That was beautiful. And congratulations on managing your insect life too. so beautifully. So we will hear more from you a little later on. Thank you so much for opening this conversation so brilliantly and giving us such a breadth of insight. I'd now like to ask Laura to speak to us from the perspective of your creative work, your work as an artist, Laura. How would you describe your manifesto and how you manifest it?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the intro, Richard. I will start by reading this piece that I wrote and dive into that. So, no, I will not apologize. Does it offend you? Don't clip my wings. Category this, category that, ethnicity, blackness, whiteness, colorless. Don't clip my wings. I have no desire to fit in. No apologies. Born to be free, born to be me, born to thrive, not strive. Don't clip my wings. Category A, category B, ability, disability. Hey, I was born to be free, born to be me, no desire to fit in. I am me. For this, I will not apologize. So yeah, my name is Laura Nyahue. I am based in Coventry. I'm also originally from Zimbabwe, a mother of two. I am an artist, and I use quite different forms of communications. So what really inspired me to write this piece was when I came to the UK from Zimbabwe. I came with so much excitement, but only to become a Black woman. I say to become a Black woman because I come from a heritage and a family that encouraged me to see humans as humans, acknowledge and appreciate who I am, and appreciate who the other, whatever they look like, is. So when I came here, I had an experience in a class. This was in an art class. I was advancing my creative skills, and I was the only Black person in the room, which is something that I had not registered then until someone said to me, Laura, how does it feel to be the only Black person in the room? So that was my first encounter of actually being picked out of a crowd. I tried quite a number of times to align myself with opportunities that would then advance me to become, the established artist that I've always dreamt to be. But yeah, it was quite difficult. So not only did I experience that, alongside that was also noticing that this was not just about me. This was not just about the arts, but it was an immigration issue as well, an issue about race, an issue about discrimination, an issue about being othered. So fast forwarding, I have someone that I call my adopted mom, who really just encouraged me to do something in the arts, like to work in communities. And then through that, I met quite a number of women who were going through the same situation, but they were working in other industries or maybe not working. So there was an elephant in the room here. And the elephant was about what I look like. And the question of, I can't change my skin. I can't change who I am. After experiencing a number of things, which I still experience now, I was mentored by a lady that was some years, I would say like about nearly 7 years ago. This lady said to me, because I wanted to start an organization, I was still pushing my career as an artist. But what she said to me really struck me. She said, Laura, I think you are really being apologetic about your story, about your experience as a Black woman, about your experience of domestic violence, about your experience of discrimination in the arts. So that really hit me because I was really passionate about this subject. And from that, during that same time, I was actually experiencing a situation where I was kicked out of a venue as an artist that was in need. I was kicked out of a venue by a white led organization. They felt that what I was doing was too similar to them. I'm threatening whatever it is that was going, I'm threatening their practice. So they kicked me out of that space. It was quite a racial attack. So during that time, that's when I was really inspired to write this piece of No Apologies. I had to really come to a place of owning who I was and understanding what this sector or this country that I migrated to is, and really bring myself to the place of, okay, how do I navigate it? But how do I take other communities with me? How do I take other women with me? So how this manifested, it manifested through my creativity. I turned to my practice as a way of expressing whatever it is that was going on around me. I make body adornments, and the body adornments are a form of storytelling. I'm a storyteller, I'm a performer, I'm a curator, I'm a producer. And everything that I do, I have to dig deep within. I have to connect with, it's a continual visceral experience. Why? Because I came to the understanding that this system that we are working in is not a free-for-all. It made me sit down and ask myself, what about my children? What about my daughter who's interested in the arts? What about that woman that I met the other year on the bus, and she said to me, Laura, my children were born here. They are now at the age of university, but they're saying, Mommy, I can't go to uni because you are an intelligent woman who's intelligent enough to teach science, to teach maths, to teach all sorts of things, but you've not found a job. You keep getting a job and living because of racism, because of discrimination. So I had to ask myself, what do I do in order to shift something, in order to encourage someone? And the only way that I could manifest that was through tapping in to my own personal experiences, but other migrant women's personal experience, and manifesting that through my writing. It's not an easy task, but it needs to be done. Because here we are sitting 2022, and we are still talking about the same issue. It continually shifts a little bit and then it stops. It shifts a bit and it stops. So I call myself a creative visionary. I do quite a lot of things. I call myself a creative visionary because everything that I do, whether I am making my body adornments, whether I'm writing, whether I am delivering a workshop, what's in my mind is, how is this impacting the next generation? What change, what seeds am I planting, and what fruits are going to shoot from here? That's how I manifest. I came to understand quite a lot about things around conversations when I started to be very active in the arts. Conversations that are like, oh, so what do we do now? How can we help you? What do we do in order for us to be more diverse? But these conversations, they don't go far. They don't go further. It's a one-off stunt. So as a result of this, when I embrace to the best of my ability, when I work in communities or work with other artists, it's about sitting down with them, getting to know them, getting to understand what is it that they're really into. Is it curating? Is it creating sculptures? Is it painting? What is it really? Or maybe it is something totally different. But what I've discovered as we are doing this and partnering with organizations is there's not enough time to do this. There's not enough time to care. There's not enough time to hold hands. There's no time. Because there's so many agendas, there's so many policies to write, there's so many things to do, there's so many deadlines to meet. But what about the people? The humans that are here to manifest who they really are, in order for us to really connect and become a better you and become a better me. And as a result, we will see the change that we are looking for. So as an artist, but also as a founder of an organization, I manifest from within. It is hard. It is not a job. Sometimes I get up and I'm asking myself, what am I doing? Sometimes I get up and I feel like I've been run by a bus. But we need it. We need it. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Laura, that's wonderful. Teresa, Laura, thank you so much for bringing yourselves to this conversation with such clarity and power. Zahra?
Yes, I'm here. Hello. Hiya, everybody. My name's Zahra Ash-Harper. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm quite a dark-skinned Black woman. I'm wearing rose gold big glasses. I've got very short hair. I'm based in Bristol, but I'm from London, innit? Yeah, I just want to kind of start by saying my name means iridescent light, and I apologise because the sun has been following me across my room so intensely and possibly blinding loads of you. I've done my best to sort that out now, so hopefully everybody can kind of either hear or see me or both, depending on how you are. So yeah, I guess just to introduce myself, I'm a creative director for inclusion. I've invented my last 3 job titles, and in doing so, I think it gives me a bit of freedom to reinvent what it means to produce inclusion, to make inclusion happen, to inspire and aspire and challenge people to be involved in the overwhelming mission that I think equity and inclusion and diversity presents in the culture sector. I want to thank both Teresa and Laura for their contribution. I could not agree more with so much of what you all said. You both said it echoes my experiences, but also my heart in a lot of ways. And I think that's what I'm kind of going to try and speak to. I see my job as being an applied philosopher. It's helping people to manifest their philosophies. It's sharing and listening to those philosophies. And it is about sharing and listening to myself and my own philosophies and bringing those things to life in a really practical, applied way. I tend to do that by focusing on people's hearts and transforming people's hearts in order to affect their minds, how they think, how they feel, how they behave in the future. I'm going to just kind of, I guess, stick to a few things that I use by rote that hopefully will contain some of this huge conversation that occurs within myself. But one of the things I say is that I believe that there is accountability of intention, experience and outcome. And it's one of those things that I hold really, really dear in my practice, because I think that it helps me to think about how I'm helping people and supporting them in articulating their intentions in a space, in a safe way, but in a real way, and how I'm providing great experiences for people to transform hearts, minds, and their spaces around them. But I think in the end, if the outcome is not present and if you're not accountable for that outcome, you haven't really done your job as an inclusion producer. So about 4 years ago, I started a huge project that was based off the back of some really amazing inclusion gains and wins for an organisation I work for called Watershed. It's in Bristol, and we did some really great work. The project that we applied for was huge. It was an AHRC project. We got a lot of great funding to support a lot of people in the ecosystem of Bristol and Bath, and it felt like a massive win. But I think that it speaks to this symptom that we have where we aspire, but manifesting is really complicated. This was pre-pandemic, but post-Brexit. And I think everybody was starting to realise that we had to make the matter part of Black Lives Matter. But we also had to begin, I think, to think more inclusively and intersectionally across a huge range of different personal characteristics. And so I came up with a phrase that I call people of difference. And I really hope that it doesn't offend anybody, but I use that phrase comfortably these days because it allows people to self-identify. It allows people who identify in lots of ways that we haven't yet come to understand as being different to the system. It's not different from one another. It's really different from a system that's not designed for individuality. And so in my research approach to designing that program, I started to think more about equity and how equity can mean not necessarily providing the same solutions for everybody in seeking equity, and that there had to be a really slow and bespoke approach to designing inclusive environments for people, both online and in person. When I started that project, I never realized that it was going to move towards a project that's actually captured my spirit and soul of inclusion, which is called Equitable Futures. I did that job for about 2.5 years, and it was incredibly challenging because there were so many people and interest groups, so many partners involved in manifesting change. And I think that's another thing that we need to question in ourselves. What does it mean to collaborate in creating equitable environments for one another across organizations, as well as across interest groups, as well as across personalities, as well as across many, many different intersectional characteristics? I started working on Equitable Futures with a white man in his 70s called Bill Sharp. He designed this program of a structure of thinking called 3 Horizons. And that has been one of the biggest growth spurts I've ever had, finding a way to love and professionally care for a white man in his 70s whose work I really admire, has really helped to grow, see me grow, see him grow, and us develop a level of trust between ourselves, a collaborative trust that has really informed slowing down the mission of inclusion. I think we all talk about the urgency of social justice, and I think that makes so much sense. But in manifesting change that is hundreds of years in the building, you know, we kind of deep down know that we may not see the benefits of those changes in our lifetime. Laura, you spoke of your children. I think often of my nephews. I have 40 mentees that are sort of anywhere between 20 and 35. And I think about them when I think about this work. And fundamentally, it's really complicated to hold and bear the responsibility for that change on our shoulders. But we do it, I think, with them in our hearts and minds. And I guess for me, I often think about the inclusion or the equity journey as one of being in a car on a journey together. It doesn't matter to me if you're learning to drive, if you're in the driver's seat, if you're in the passenger seat, if you're strapped to the bonnet, or if you're in the boot, as long as you're on that journey somewhere, thinking about your readiness for arrival. I think that's what really counts. It's the way that I see it. I think in that way about collective wisdom. And I think what is needed is for us to really be able to develop a holistic approach that deals with both the complexity, uncertainty, and interconnectedness of this journey. I believe that this is beyond the capacity of us as individuals and requires us to work as a group and a team. Wise decisions, as contrasted with clever decisions, I think requires communities and deep collaboration. Wherever there is individual capacity, the ability to think and feel and act creatively, it becomes essential to navigate an increasingly unknown territory of interconnected, complex challenges. And so in all of that, one has to think, what do I need, what as an individual, to activate the capacity I have to produce inclusion as an individual, wherever you are in the sector, wherever you are on the journey. So I've written a piece that I hope is very short, and then I'm going to finish, which I really hope does somewhat inspire you all to think about and reflect on where the beginnings of this journey can be, or re-establish as a connection to a journey that you've already begun. It's called Missing You. It's you. If not you, then who? If not you, then why or for what? What brings you here? I ask you because you are here with us. So it's time for you to find your reason for being here. After all, you brought you here. You must have questions at the very least. And as we all know, it's easier to look back and sideways than into the future or inside ourselves. But have you made the space or time to actually ask yourselves, what does it feel like to be here? Is it good to be here? Can I make it good to be here? What would it take for me to want to be here? Would I come back to be here? What do I have to offer as an act of inclusion? Can I give love and care to the sector? I guess the real question becomes, how well might you be known? And who might you know better? Because the brave are never alone in history, and no one is above the canon. But no one need ever know that you were here listening to this, but you and I. And so we will return until we get it right. Because if not you, then who? If not you, then why or for what? Ask yourself, what really brings you here? How did you get here? And can you do that for some who are less familiar to you? You are here, and I thank you for that. I'm Zahra Ash-Harper. I really look forward to hopefully hearing from some of you. And yeah, thank you so much, Richard, for the invitation.
Thank you, Zahra. Thank you, Teresa, Laura, Zahra. And now, finally, at this moment, I'm going to invite Michèle to unmute and tell us a bit about the ways in which you support the manifestation of change in the organisations that you work with, Michèle.
Thank you so much, Richard, and hello, everybody. I'm Michèle Taylor. I'm a white woman, 60-year-old white woman. I have short, was dark, now greying hair. I'm wearing yellow glasses and a dark green zip top with a white t-shirt underneath. It's the beauty of the alchemy of such a wonderfully curated session, isn't it? That coming last, Teresa and Laura and Zahra have said so much that is absolutely foundational to what I want to say. And the tone of what I want to say is different. It's very much based on strategy, practical strategies, and what we have found in the work that we do, which I'll mention in a moment, what we have found actually works. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that foundation. I'm grateful for the heart and the passion and the love that frees me to talk about very, very practical strategies. So I'm Director for Change at Ramps on the Moon. We're a consortium of mid-scale mainstream theatres, and we're all about normalising the presence of disabled, deaf, and neurodivergent people in professional mainstream theatre. Laura, I smiled when you said you've made up your last 3 job titles. We were trying to think of a job title for me when I took up this role, and I was going for Director of Change. And it was when I spoke to my then 19-year-old son who said, but it's Director for Change, isn't it? And it feels really significant to this conversation. Director for Change feels so much more dynamic, so much more energized, so much more intentional than Director of Change. So I'm delighted that that's what I ended up with, Director for Change. So at Ramps on the Moon, we believe in the power of stories, the stories that we tell on our stages, for sure, but also the stories we tell about who we are as organizations, the stories we tell others, and the stories we tell ourselves, and how those stories enable us to manifest change or keep us stuck where we are. That's absolutely crucial. So part of what we do is we expose those stories, not in a brutal way, I hope, but we expose those stories, we subject them to rigor. What really are the stories? And I've got 3 key mechanisms that I just want to mention. The first is agents for change. Now, we actually have individuals who we call agents for change, capital A, capital C, but agents for change, small a for small c, are really vital. Who are the agents? Who are the engines of change in the organizations? They must be embedded. They must be a part of those organizations, which isn't to say that they can't be freelancers, but they must be embedded. And if you're a freelancer working in an organization, you must get into those nooks and crannies and be embedded, be around, be present, whether that's physically present or remotely present, because some of our agents for change are not physically present at the moment because we're still living with the pandemic. Those agents must exercise leadership within the organizations. They must, from wherever they are in the organization, they must exercise leadership, have influence, and have a mandate from senior management. But crucially, they don't do the work, the change work themselves. They're catalysts, they're enablers. I always say to our agents for change, which each of our partners employs an agent for change. And I always say to our agents for change that they don't have a desk, they have a trampoline. Nothing lands with them. Everything bounces back into the organization. That's crucial. Put it back where it belongs. Don't hold it. Don't carry it. That's care and love, actually. And that's manifesting change. So that's agents for change. Secondly, this is a bit contrived, but I do like single letters. So all of my 3 points start with an A. Your administration and your systems must be aligned. So this is the real nuts and bolts stuff. What's in your contracts? Your job descriptions, your job contracts, your contracts with those you commission, your contracts with those that you hire on the short term. What's in the contracts? Because if it's not in the contracts, it's not going to happen. Your meeting schedules, how you organize your physical space and your digital space. What does all of that say about who you are, and how does it enable the change that you have said you want? I'll come back to that in a minute. Where are the decision-making points in your systems? Where is that locus of the moment when the decision is made, signed off, whether literally and formally, or maybe there's an informal place where actually that decision gets signed off. Identify it and make sure that you can get into that decision-making locus. Spot the blocks. What's stopping the change? Notice not who's stopping the change. I don't think that's helpful. What's stopping the change? Spot the frustrated enablers. Spot the people who have an energy and a heart for this within the organization and are being frustrated. So that's about your administration and your systems being aligned. And then thirdly, authenticity. So crucial. I think directly and indirectly, everybody's talked about that so far today. Authenticity is so important. There's a concept of organizational justice that means a lot of different things, actually. But one of the things that it means, I think, is that everybody working in the organization can locate what it is they're being asked to do within the value system of the organization. The change that you want to make in the organization has been articulated. Everybody understands it. Everybody understands their place in it. They understand the story of change. Check the intention against the values. Why have you made the promise that you've made? Why have you made it? Ask that question and answer it rigorously. Because if you don't do that, I think it will simply remain manifesto, not manifestation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michèle. Thank you to Teresa, Laura, Zahra, Michèle. I feel like you've set out for us a range of collective perspectives that say the same thing in different ways, that draw us to similar conclusions. And I feel like certainly we've heard about authenticity. Certainly we've heard about agency. Certainly we've been hearing about a sense that we need to slow down. We need to make space. We need to listen. We need to trust. We talk about creating conditions that make our intentions inevitable, like a garden that grows thriving plants. You create the garden by focusing on the conditions that enable the growth, not stretching the plants. You'll snap them. You create nourishing environments and enable them to thrive. We've heard about, I think, moving at the speed of trust. And we've heard that we're not seeking perfection, we're seeking self-awareness, self-confidence, self-expression. And those are some of the conditions that enable each of us to have an effect on the places that we're working, whether we're working within them or whether we're seeking to change them in order to make them more equitable for ourselves and others. We've been talking and listening to the idea of creating conditions to complete creating the conditions that enable the promise to be manifest. And before we finish today, I wanted to draw us back to, I guess, our own manifestations. So in this process of Freelance Futures, we invite you to bring your ecosystem, bring a range of people who are required in order to make change where you are. That might be your colleague, it might be a general manager or an HR colleague, it might be some freelancers who you work with, it might be some artists, it might be a union rep, it might be a funder. Who are those that are required in order to create the change you desire? Invite that ecosystem into this space and encourage them to listen to this conversation and others and read documents that we're posting in this space. I brought my ecosystem today. You met them, Teresa, Zahra, Laura, and Michèle. Invite yours and ask them what's needed to create change in your context. We have a tool that I know Nyahue will pop in the chat, a tool designed to structure that conversation so that you bring people to you who can help you to identify the changes that are needed in your organization or the things that you might ask for of organizations you work with. We're not seeking perfection. We're seeking that people honor the promises that they've made themselves and others about the place that they're inviting you to work in. Be the person who gently but assertively calls on the honoring of those promises and helps people see the gap between the intention and the experience. You know, we judge others, we judge ourselves by our intentions, and we judge others by their impact. So someone needs to help us, each of us, to notice the difference. And I think we can all do that in our ecosystems through this process. So a thing I'd like to ask for each of us to do in the next minute is just ground this conversation back in your own experience. What are you seeking to manifest in your organization or in the organizations that you work with as a freelancer? What are you wishing? What are the gaps you're wishing to close? What are the things you're wishing to stand for? What does this conversation with Teresa and Zahra and Laura and Michèle, how does it apply to what you're committed to making happen? What brought you to Freelance Futures? So I wonder if we could ask you to write 3 or 4 words in the chat that relate to that relate to how you might manifest in response to this conversation, your intentions around creating more equitable conditions for freelancers. It might be that you want to ask for them more clearly. It might be that you want to give them more effectively. Would you take a moment? I'm going to create some space. Take a moment, write a few words in the chat and then send it over the wall. I'll be silent for a minute. Thank you. We haven't exhausted this topic. We've just exhausted the conversation for the time we've dedicated to it today. Thank you for the beautiful things you're sending across the ether to us, to each other. We have a space called Mighty Networks. If you go to the Freelance Futures website and click on community, you can access that space. And there'll be a space dedicated to this conversation with links and documents that all of us will have access to. Feel free to share in that space. We'll put these comments in that space too. And if you have questions or want to connect, use Mighty Networks to form groups to move this conversation forward. And we look forward to seeing you throughout Freelance Futures. This recording will be available online in the coming days for you to share with others or to rewatch. I'd like to thank Teresa, Zahra, Laura, Michèle, and each of you for a really beautiful hour. Thank you.